Hi everyone. Here we are at the last lecture of chapter 16, and this is going to be a very, very brief lecture compared to the last several. I wanted to include it originally at the end of the anterior pituitary lecture, but it really is its own content, so I've left it by itself, but it really will be a very short lecture, so don't plan on spending a whole lot of time here today. So let's go ahead and get rolling with our not really attendance questions. First, what is common among all types of diabetes? And second, what is the stimulus for ADH? Okay, hopefully you've paused the video and tried to answer those. What is common among all types of diabetes? Well, by now we've talked about diabetes quite a bit. We will be talking about diabetes off and on throughout the semester. And we know some types of diabetes are the ones we're familiar with, the ones that have to do with insulin and glucose. But some types of diabetes don't have anything to do with insulin or glucose. But the one thing that's common among all types of diabetes is polyuria, or increased urination. If you're peeing a lot, that is a symptom of diabetes, regardless of the type of diabetes. Next, what is the stimulus for ADH? Well, there's several, but really what we're looking for here is what is the primary stimulus for ADH? The primary stimulus for ADH is an increase in plasma osmolarity, which that happens during times of dehydration. So that is something we will talk about throughout the semester. We are going to talk about ADH more than any other hormone this semester. So go ahead and lock that in your brain somewhere where you can access it often and easily. So now we've talked about all the major glands related to the endocrine system, but there are other glandular tissues, and really pretty much any tissue in the body is going to be releasing a hormone at some point, but we're going to talk about a few of those in this lecture. First is the pineal gland, and some sources consider the pineal gland a part of the endocrine system. Some do not. We're not going to worry about how to classify it. We're just going to talk about what does it do. Well, the pineal gland is sometimes called the third eye because it is somewhat light receptive. But the pineal gland is where we release melatonin. Melatonin is what sets our circadian rhythm, our day-night cycle, and it also plays a role in our mood. So melatonin increases when light levels get low. That stimulates the pineal gland to release melatonin. And then when light levels get higher, that stops the release of melatonin. So not counting artificial light, melatonin is higher at nighttime and low in the daytime. And that is what sets our day-night cycle. Now, if you've ever worked third shift, or if you know anyone who has, and really if you're going into nursing at some point, you're probably going to work third shift, you know that that really throws off your day-night cycle, and that's because it is interfering with when melatonin is being produced, because you're constantly being exposed to light when you're at work at nighttime, and in the daytime it's kind of hard to block that light out of your house. And when your day-night cycle gets thrown off, you've probably noticed that it throws your mood off a little bit too. You get cranky very easily. Alright, next, adipose tissue. Fat. So adipose tissue releases a hormone called leptin, and leptin helps control appetite. Leptin decreases your appetite, which makes sense. If there's excess adipose tissue, then there's not as much need to eat. So adipose tissue produces a hormone, leptin, which decreases your drive to eat. And similar to that, but on the other side, your stomach releases a hormone called ghrelin. And this is related to the stretch on your stomach. When it's been a while since you've eaten, so we say when you are fasting, and this doesn't necessarily mean a long-term fast, but just any time that it's been a while since you've eaten and your stomach is empty and unstretched, it produces ghrelin. And ghrelin, when it's being released by the stomach, is hunger. When you feel hungry, actual hunger, not hunger from boredom, but when you are actually hungry, that is because ghrelin is being released. It tells you, hey, my stomach's empty, I need to eat something. And then when you eat and your stomach fills and it begins to stretch the walls of your stomach, that is the inhibition that's going to trigger ghrelin to stop being released. So leptin and ghrelin are both related to appetite. More leptin, you're not as hungry. More ghrelin, you are more hungry. Okay, so now let's switch gears and talk a little bit about blood-related topics. The atria, which are the two chambers on the superior or top portion of your heart. These are the receiving chambers of the heart. Well, they release something called ANP, or atrial natriuretic peptide. ANP. Well, when your blood pressure is elevated, so when you have higher blood pressure, that's going to stretch the walls of the heart, specifically the walls of the atria. More blood pressure, as blood's coming into the heart, there's going to be more pressure within the heart, it stretches those walls. And when the atria are stretched, they release the hormone ANP, atrial natriuretic peptide. And ANP does a few things. One, it's a vasodilator. It causes your blood vessels to expand in a way that makes them have a larger diameter. So they dilate. And as they dilate, there's going to be less pressure within. Same volume of blood in a bigger space, less pressure. Okay, another thing that ANP does is it tells your kidneys to reabsorb less sodium. So think about that. Back when we were talking about aldosterone, we said it told your kidneys to reabsorb more sodium, and we said wherever sodium goes, water goes with it, because solutes suck. And as water moves towards that salt, because of aldosterone, water moves towards the sodium, it increased our blood volume and it increased our blood pressure. Well, ANP does just the opposite. It tells our kidneys to reabsorb less sodium. And if you reabsorb less sodium, you will also reabsorb less water. If you reabsorb less water, then your blood volume is going to remain lower and your blood pressure will drop. Okay, your kidneys release a hormone called erythropoietin. Erythropoietin, abbreviated EPO. Your kidneys detect the level of oxygen in your blood. When levels of oxygen in your blood are low, that stimulates your kidneys to release erythropoietin. We will talk about erythropoietin when we get to chapter 17, blood. But what erythropoietin does is it stimulates your bone marrow to make more red blood cells. Red blood cells are the cells that carry oxygen. So if your oxygen level in your blood is low, if you make more red blood cells, well, you can carry more oxygen. And yes, it's your kidneys, of all places, that handles that. When oxygen levels are low, kidneys detect that. Kidneys release erythropoietin. Your bone marrow makes more red blood cells, so now you can carry more oxygen. And the thymus gland. The thymus gland is one that a lot of students don't know about when they get to this class, but it's a weird gland. Well, first of all, it's in your upper chest, lower neck region, kind of right above your heart. And the thymus is weird in that it's the only thing in your body that is larger when you are born than when you are an adult. As you age, the thymus gland shrinks because it has less function. So what is the function of the thymus gland? The thymus gland produces a hormone called thymosin. And thymosin is what stimulates some of your immune system, specifically certain types of white blood cells called T lymphocytes. It stimulates them to develop. So your thymus kind of starts your immune system developing. And when you are younger, there's a lot more development that needs to happen in your immune system. As you age, your immune system is pretty well developed, so it doesn't have as much function. The thymus starts to kind of wither, and it has less of a role in adults. So, like I said, that really is just a small portion of all of the hormone producing tissues in your body aside from the endocrine system. Those are just the ones that we want to talk about and make sure that you understand. That brings us to the end of the endocrine system. That brings us to the end of Unit 1, Block 1. So our next thing will be Lecture Exam 1. Make sure that you go back and you review everything that we have talked about in Block 1, all of the endocrine chapter that we have discussed. It's a good idea to tie that into lab. Lab and lecture really overlap a lot. Now, if there is something that is only discussed in lecture and not at all in lab, then it will only be on a lecture exam. If there is something that is only discussed in lab and not in lecture, it will only be on a lab practical exam. But if there's something that's in both parts of the class, expect it to be on both exams. So, like I said, that brings us to the end of this block. Now, make sure and study, and then once we get this exam out of the way, we will continue into Block 2, which will cover blood and immune system. All right, take care and let me know if you have any questions.